Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to this week's version of VC Notes. We're doing a coffee talk version, and we have a wonderful guest with us here today. I'm delighted that we have Speaker Jason White. He is the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the state of Mississippi. So welcome, Speaker White. We're so glad to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. It's good to be here.
We're really glad to have him here today, and you all have heard me on multiple times talk about the support that we have from the Mississippi legislature, and that is something that's really important to the medical center. Overall, about 10% of our revenue comes from our state appropriations. That is really generous support, especially from a state that has a lot of needs, limited resources and a lot of needs. So we appreciate it very much. We do not take it for granted. We support our academics with those funds, education and research. And then in these last few years, we've had the opportunity to, in 2017, open a new School of Medicine building, the building that we're in right now with the support of the state. Under construction, the School of Nursing Education building, a dental education building is in the works. We're doing the planning for that. So the support that we get from the state of Mississippi for this institution is really phenomenal. And I just want to lead out by saying how much we appreciate that. And for the folks who may not be aware, you have been a critical figure in that support. When we have looked to the House, Speaker Gunn, when you were the pro tem, and now in your current role, but certainly these years when we've looked to the House for support, we've been very grateful for the support that's been there. So let me just start by saying thank you for that. It's really phenomenal.
It's been my privilege to work on those projects. Those were neat and cool projects. I tell folks as we travel around, and even when we're in other states, meeting with their leadership, there are a lot of things in our state that I hope people don't want to talk about. But one of the things I like for them to bring up and us to talk about is our IHL system in general, but specifically what's going on at the medical center. It's one of our bright stars, as a state. And so those years and the new medical school and the things you were mentioning, those projects, they're important to the mission. It is about seeing the patients and caring for some of our sickest and poorest folks in the state, but at the same time, it's about the mission of the educational piece of it for me. And so everybody sometimes, they want to not criticize, but question the idea of the state support that we give to a medical center, to a working hospital, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm quick to remind them, this is way more than just seeing patients. They are training our healthcare workforce in Mississippi. And so that mission fits well with what I think is what we're supposed to be about as public servants. Across the street at the Capitol is pushing our state forward. And certainly y'all are on the leading edge of that.
Well, thank you for that. And we appreciate that support, and we're doing everything we can do for the whole citizenship of the state to kind of feel that way, to feel that we are their academic medical center, whether it is related to some of our education programs or it's patient care or whatever it is. We want the entire state to be excited about what's going on here. But your support has been very instrumental, and we are grateful for that. So aside from that, what I really want to start out with is giving you the opportunity to tell people about your own personal background. Your background, where you're from. You are from a part of the state that I think sees a lot of those challenges day to day and face to face. A little bit about your family. Just kind of tell us who you are, and how in the world did you get interested in politics?
I ask myself that routinely on my way to the Capitol. I was born and raised in Kosciusko, right in the center of our state, and I met my now wife of almost 30 years when I was in junior high school, and after college at Mississippi College and law school here downtown, and you bring up the politics piece, I went to Mississippi College's law school that's right downtown, a block from the Capitol. Drove by the Capitol every day for 3 years. never once did I think I would be over in that building.
Probably wondered, what are they doing over there? Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't know. I don't come from a family of politicians. My folks weren't involved in that. My parents were educators in the community college system, as well as my mom taught high school and junior high English for 35 years. So I grew up in an English teacher's household.
Okay.
After school, we moved back home, and I practiced law there in Kosciuszko for 25 years, and we live in the big city of West, which is my wife's hometown. And she is also a product of the medical center. I remember coming to visit her here when she stayed in the dorm when she was in nursing school. I don't know if those buildings are still standing now or not.
They are standing, but they are not dorms.
I understand. They've been repurposed. Good.
They've been repurposed.
It probably was time. So anyway, she enjoyed a great career with the university system, staffing and running the family medical clinics in both Durant and in Holmes County and West, where we live, as well as the one in Lexington and the one in Vaden in Carroll County. So she was on the front lines in my legislative district seeing patients. So I probably heard more than most lawmakers as far as what's going on the healthcare scene, just from her interaction with her patients and with the university. So I was maybe a little more in tune than most as to what y'all do every day. What could be, where she would say, y'all need to look at this as a state or this. And so the speaker always reminds me, my first year in the legislature, I requested to be on the Medicaid committee. And I put it like number one. And he called me in, he goes, I'm gonna give you the committee. He said, but I got a question, why did you pick this? And I said, well, my wife thinks we need to get in there and make all this better. So I knew just enough to be dangerous when it comes to healthcare. So I won't profess to be a scholar on the subject or all-knowing, but I do know it impacts so many lives in Mississippi, and we've got a lot of room for improvement. As far as how I got into politics, when we moved back home to West, a spot came open on the Board of Aldermen. We actually have a mayor and Board of Aldermen in our town of about 200 folks there in West. And somebody said, Jason, you should run for the Board of Aldermen. And so I did. What I did not calculate in that was my mother-in-law was the mayor. And so, when I was first going to run for the legislature, somebody said, Jason, you're a nice guy. You'll never last in the rough and tumble that is the legislature and those politics. And I said, look, if I can negotiate serving on a Board of Aldermen where my mother-in-law is the mayor, I think I can handle.
Finessed a few situations.
Yes,
yeah.
I think I can. I still get invited to all the family holidays, and we made it work. And so we're proud of our little town there. We've managed to hold it together.
Good training for.
It was good training, and as my father-in-law says, we have at least one of everything in West, which was good training for what goes on in the politics at the Capitol. So we've been able to navigate that as well, I guess.
Well, I certainly appreciate your wife and her background and the experiences that she's been able to share with you and the impact that's had on how you think about things. I think I'm from Carroll County, so that small little part of the world, very rural, and just like your hometown and all the areas that you represent, the challenges around access to health care, the challenges that people have just from the standpoint of resources and education level and all the things, have your wife having been on that front line, she is the expert in healthcare challenges in Mississippi. So I think it's wonderful that you've got that resource available to you. Basically, she is the expert on the challenges that we have in the state of Mississippi. So that is not necessarily a qualification that would go on your own personal resume, but something that I think is really important and critical.
It's important, and it's helped me kind of see it from a different. It's not just a line item in our budget, whether we're talking about UMMC's budget or the Department of Health or whatever. It really does have a huge impact.
When you're sitting down one-on-one with the patient in that very rural setting where access to the meds that they need, access to transportation, access to a specialist is a challenge you're facing day after day after day, I mean, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the real stuff. Yeah. So what do you like to do when you are not being the speaker and you're not being a lawyer and you're not officially at your job? What do you like to do?
We duck hunt a lot and we football a lot. My son plays football, and so we have enjoyed following his career. And so I guess you'd say we became sports parents a little bit. But when we're not doing that, we really enjoy duck hunting and just being around West. We have land there, and we enjoy all the things that go with that, and the cows and that sort of thing. And they don't really talk back to you. You can tell them anything,
and they don't repeat it, and they don't talk back.
That's right. So, but we do a lot of hunting, duck hunting specifically in the Delta, and we enjoy that very much.
So in my family, we've got deer hunters and then turkey hunters. Duck hunting kind of falls in that in between those two seasons, doesn't it?
It does.
Is it?
It
Yeah,
does.
yeah. I don't really
It
have
does.
any immediate family members that are big duck hunters, but I know lots of folks who are, and I feel like it kind of hits that in between deer season and before turkey season starts.
It does. For us, it's a 60-day process. Now, my new gig as speaker has cut into that, because January is usually
It's
the best
prime
time for
yeah.
duck hunting. So that's cut into that
The weather
greatly.
is terrible.
And the weather
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very cold and wet and that sort of thing. The wetter and colder, the better usually.
Oh wow, okay. That would not be the way I'd want to spend my free time or downtime. All right, so you were the pro tem for Speaker Gunn for a number of years, and now you have moved into the speaker position. So you had really good, I feel like, training, exposure, all the things as the number 2 person. Now that you're sitting in that number 1 spot, have there been any surprises? Have there been any, and I don't mean pieces of legislation that were surprises, I
Right.
just mean kind of the job.
The job.
The things that you thought, wow, I really wasn't expecting that. I thought I had a pretty good feeling of the landscape. Have there been surprises, good, bad, or otherwise?
There have. I probably underestimated the time management aspect of all the facets of being speaker. I was very fortunate. Speaker Gunn, he let me hang around and on the fringe of a lot of things he was doing in my 4 years as his speaker pro tem, which that job also entails running the day-to-day operations of the House of Representatives, which has nothing to do with legislation. It has to do with hiring and firing and, everything from the lawyers to the porters. So that gave me a chance to see the inner workings of the business that is the Capitol and the things that make it go, on a day-to-day basis. And so when that transition into the Speaker's office is more about managing 121 personalities. There's 122 members in the House. I'm one of those 122. But those other 121 were elected by the same number of people that I was. And their at-home folks sent them there, with their agendas and their ideas and things that are important to their community. And even this last year, campaigning not only in for my seat, but helping others get elected, it was good for me to be all over the state and just see my different colleagues as they were running their races, what was important in their communities. And it reminded me, and probably I never appreciated it this way. As small as our state is, and less than 3 million people, it's extremely diverse. Like, what's important in Northeast Mississippi is those things change. You just drive 50 miles and the economies are different. The industry's different. It's amazing that even in our little state, how varied we are from DeSoto County to the Gulf Coast and east to west. And so that was good for me in a way. That election cycle this past year was good for me because those people are the people that show up and make up the membership. And the challenges of all those different ideas and different regions being pulled into one piece of legislation, if
What's
you will.
best for the state of Mississippi overall, and that's
Right, and that's the other trade-off in the Speaker's office. You sit there and think about individual legislative districts versus the good of the state as a whole, and sometimes those things don't always mesh.
Well, and I would imagine, I've never been in any kind of position as a legislator, but I would imagine that even just for the individual person thinking about any issues, there's that tension between this is good for the state versus I'm going to have to go back and talk to my constituents and explain why maybe it doesn't look as good for our community, but it's good for the overall, and that's hard.
That's hard.
One of the things that I have noticed over these years since I've been in this role, I have spent a fair amount of time at the Capitol during the session. And with this year being a 4-month session, I'm really glad we've got one of those months behind us.
That's right.
But down at the Capitol in the session, speaking with different legislators on different issues, pertaining to healthcare or higher education or the medical center specifically, or whatever, a whole variety of topics, and meeting with lots of different people. I have been struck by the intensity during those months, the pace. You have an appointment with somebody, you go in to meet with them, and just to make things up, I've got 30 minutes with a certain legislator. I really need 45, to talk about my stuff. The person before me was in the same boat, the person behind me, and people are coming in talking about entirely different topics, and that personal individual legislator may have a background that's in real estate or landscape or whatever, something completely not related to the topics that
That's right.
they're getting these pressured situations of, let me tell you my 5 things, and let me,
Right. And these ideas that are extremely important to you and are on the
Yes.
front burner for you, you leave out, you walk out of the office and the next person walks in and they want to talk about,
Something totally different.
Yeah, a port on the Gulf Coast.
Or the other side of the same argument. So it's a challenge.
There's a lot of give and take.
Yes.
And in my acceptance speech when I was elected speaker, I tried to remind our entire body that, purity in politics is a loser. And I've tried to kind of operate in that way of,
What do you mean by that?
what is, it's, if you're getting some of what you want, don't let that 10% you're not getting keep us from advancing and moving forward. When we can get 90% of what we want that everybody can agree on, let's leave the 10 over here for now. We'll deal with it, but let's get this 90%. And sometimes that's a big win when we can do that.
Yeah. Well, I think coming from that perspective is very good, because rarely in life do you get everything you want, and it's always a compromise, in some way or another. I have participated this year so far in one joint hearing on public health between the House and the Senate, and I thought, that it was so positive to have everybody in the room and kind of to hear the same thing, everybody hear the same thing. That felt like sort of a different kind of, I won't say coming together, because of course they're in 2 different houses and they'll do their own things, but just looking around the room and having everybody at the table kind of that's nice. That whole idea of, let's really try to work together.
Right, and especially in the space of public health and our healthcare systems, delivery, availability, access, and affordability, all those things that we talk about, those touch every Mississippian. And it's not a Democrat or Republican issue.
Right.
It's not a
Gulf Coast
or Delta.
Minnesota,
It's everywhere. And so we are going to try, in my time as speaker, to focus on those big issues, specifically healthcare and specifically building on the gains we have had in education and in our workforce. And we're going to try to have more joint hearings on big ticket items that affect everybody, and not be so distracted by maybe sometimes scoring political points on things that certainly are important to voters and Mississippians, but sometimes keep us from focusing on big goals and big things that we could accomplish that most folks kind of agree on. And healthcare is one of those things.
Well, I really commend you for that. From somebody that goes down there and meets with all the different parties, the concept of everybody kind of at least being together to hear some things, I thought that was very positive. So through the process of legislation, I said we're 1 month into a 4-month session this year, so we haven't even hit the first deadline. The first big bill deadline's next week. So it's still very...
By the way, we've already had 1,000 bills dropped in the House alone. I think we're at 1,040 was the number yesterday.
And so...
They're all great ideas.
Oh, I know. It amazes me how many bills get dropped that have a lot to do with healthcare, and sometimes specifically name the medical center, that get dropped that we knew nothing about. That's always a surprise. And I try really hard until a couple of those deadlines have hit not to look at that bill list, but that's I can't hardly resist the urge. I do. I go back and I look at it and I think, oh my, it's a lot. But we are early on, though lots of bills have been dropped. So there's still a lot to happen in the whole sausage making process. So I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to pin you down on any given issue because we've got a long way to go. But from the standpoint of you looking back and thinking about whether you think about just this year or you think about more years than just this year, from the high level, what are some of the things that you hope to accomplish that you would feel like, okay, this was a success? What are some of those things on your mind?
Specifically, two big things, and the first thing is we've burned most of our energy the first month and even in the fall trying to figure this out. Centers around figuring out a way to cover what we are calling our low-income working population that is uninsured in Mississippi.
I love hearing that. That's
We
good.
have, Affordable Care Act has been around for over 10 years now. And whether we like it or not, it is the law of the land and it's with us. 40 states have now, in some form or fashion, taken advantage of some piece of that legislation, from the feds and found a way to cover some of their low-income workers. And so we have not looked at that in my 12 years in the legislature. We just hadn't. The answer has been no. And so I had said if I got in a position, we were going to look hard at that.
Good.
And so, and I've been very encouraged. I mentioned our 122 members. 79 of those are Republicans. And so they come from a conservative, they ran on that platform. And so when folks are saying, Jason, I think y'all are just trying to make this too Republican of an issue, I'm like, well, whatever comes out of the House is going to have a conservative spin to it because of the nature of 2/3 of the people there ran on those platforms. Now, having said that, there seems to be consensus coming together on the idea of these are working people.
Yeah.
They are a very important part of our economy. Our labor participation rate in Mississippi hovers around 50%, which means only half of us are in the working world, if you will. That segment has no health insurance. They are some of the unhealthiest, and I'd be preaching to the choir.
But I love hearing it. Keep on preaching. I love it.
To tell you about how they don't see regular routine medical care and they end up in an emergency room where the provider ends up probably not getting paid. Y'all do the best you can with them, but it's, we're just in this cycle of that. I would rather keep them out of the emergency room and in the workforce and not necessarily in a healthcare setting like that. So, and I think some basic level of healthcare insurance and coverage it won't get everybody, and some folks maybe won't use it. But for the ones that will, I want to provide it for them. And I think it's just vitally important. We're some of the unhealthiest folks in the nation, I think we could only improve in that area by getting there. Now, we have to manage cost. Our state budget runs about $7 billion, give or take. And so we already spend almost $1 billion for the state share of Medicaid. So, and you're always involved in all of that conversation as we're centering on budgets and things like that. So you know better than me. We've got to be very careful. We can't bust our budget as a state.
That's right.
So we've got to be real careful about the cost and all things related to it. So we're working hard to find that sweet spot that it probably, I think you will see a form of expansion that includes a work requirement and a traditional coverage under Medicaid, even if those are through a state exchange that we might create, and policies come through that exchange that we use Medicaid dollars to pay for, or whether it's traditional Medicaid, up to 138% of the federal poverty level. That's my goal, is to get those people covered that are getting up and going to work every day, some basic level of health coverage. The other big piece is we're going to focus really hard on bolstering and even increasing the emphasis on our career tech and our workforce development.
That's great.
In that, we've had these two huge projects just in our first month of session. We've had two special sessions, a little over $12 billion of capital investment just between those two, setting records for our state. It shows that Mississippi is kind of the cool place. We've got a little momentum and folks are recognizing it. Not only our workforce, but we've got all the ingredients. Regulations are low. We stay out of your way and let you run your business the way you want to run it. And people are recognizing that. We've always said when we get them here, we can keep them here. And so it's been exciting to see these world-class companies, both in Marshall County and now in Madison County, come and say, this is where we want to make our home. So it's been pretty cool to be involved in that, but it also exposes or shows us that we've got a ways to go with
Where the gaps
with the
are,
workforce and the way we teach it. So we want to incentivize our K-12 education models, our funding formula, and our accountability models to reflect the priorities of the state, which I believe to be a dynamic and kind of changing workforce. And let's let parents and kids make a decision that maybe they don't want the traditional college prep high school diploma. Maybe they want a career tech route where when they walk across the stage and graduate from their senior year, they also have a certificate and they can go to work and actually have a job that pays well right here in Mississippi. So we're going to work hard on that.
That's exciting. But both of those issues are very encouraging and exciting, and I think positive for the state of Mississippi. I feel like I've probably said some of this to you before, but from the standpoint of the working poor and Medicaid, sometimes people will ask me, what do you think about Medicaid expansion? And you always kind of feel like that's a trick question, when somebody's trying to put that question to you. And some of the thoughts I have is, well, number one, what we're doing right now is not the best thing. I'm really glad to hear that there's some energy around just taking a look and doing an analysis and figuring out what might be better and what can we afford and what could we get support for. We are a Republican conservative state. That's just who we are. I think there are people that live here because of that. But within that framework, I feel like we could do better. My own personal background in the emergency department, working here in the emergency department for 20 plus years, that's the place where you see all the failures of the system, all the failures of people presenting with an advanced state of a disease because they don't have access to local care, because transportation's a problem, because they can't get their meds, all the things that we know about. So I feel like, I feel especially in tune to the failures of the current system we have. So I'm pleased to hear that there's a willingness to think about what might work and how we can improve some access in the state for citizens that need it. So I'm thankful for that.
I mentioned this idea of traveling around the state in the elections this past year and helping my colleagues. For the first time, my Republican colleagues, when they're on somebody's doorstep knocking on their door asking for their vote, for the first time, voters were actually saying to them, what are y'all doing about my health care? Yeah. Whether they're concerned about their local hospital, their doctors, whatever the issues are, particularly depending on which region of the state you're in. It's either access or affordability or whatever. Both.
Yeah.
But they were bringing it up, and these are in Republican primary races. And I hate to keep going back to the Republican thought, but my point is, we've probably earned part of our bad rap for not focusing more on that, and I want us to do that. And my colleagues, for the first time, were getting the question. And so it opened everybody's eyes a little bit to, hey, this is something we really need to focus some of our political capital on.
And I do think those questions that people posed emphasize a point in that there is no one single silver bullet fix.
That's right.
In some areas, it's a workforce issue related to we don't have enough nurses, doctors, dentists, pharmacists that are in certain parts of the state. In some cases, it's services available at the local hospital and the challenges around that. In some cases, it is more of an insurance and coverage issue, but there isn't. And I think everybody who is in healthcare and people who are knowledgeable about healthcare and understand realize there is no one single thing that we can do that's going to fix all the problems. There are multiple issues at hand, but taking a look at it and figuring out where can we push some buttons that might make a difference, I think is very encouraging, and thank you for that. So, I mentioned earlier, I think we were probably not live yet, but I mentioned that this goes out to all of our employees, 10,000 plus employees. We're the second largest employer in the state. I always try to be sure everybody knows that. And our student body, about a 3,000 member student body. So lots of different people will hear this. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity. We've covered some things, but certainly there are a lot of things we haven't covered. Is there anything that you had hoped I would ask you about, or that a plug that you want to make, anything that you would want to say to this group before we wrap it up? What, let me just turn it over to you for whatever you want to say.
Not really. You alluded to it in our opening dialogue about the projects going on around the new dental school and the new nursing school. We're really excited about those. You know,
we are too.
The pandemic exposed the shortages that you already knew about, but it made other people realize around our state, you know, and lawmakers certainly, that there is a shortage and there is a need. And so we're excited about getting those new facilities online and making, you know, putting our best foot forward and trying to, you know, address some of those shortfalls. And we're excited that y'all are going to be on the front line of that.
Yes,
so,
we're really pleased.
So those are I started to say feel good things for us as policymakers, but it does show some thought toward the future of, hey, let's address this and do what we can, have a place for our young people to be trained, and hopefully they stay here in Mississippi and make a difference. And so we're excited about that.
Thank you.
And looking forward to it.
We certainly try to do all the things that we can do to be sure that that pipeline, you know, that the end result, it's medical education, whether you're talking about dental, pharmacy, physical therapy, nursing, medical, it really doesn't matter. Medical education generically is a long pipeline. Something you do today, you know, you won't see the impact next week, next month, maybe not even next year. It may be 4 or 5 years from now, but we are trying really hard to be sure that all along that step of the pipeline that we're doing everything we can do for what we consider the end goal of having more healthcare providers in Mississippi.
Right.
You know, for especially some of these rural places that we're so familiar with, the highest likelihood of somebody going back to those communities and or being in those communities and taking care of our citizens would be that they have some kind of tie to that community. They're from that area. They're you know, they have a family connection in some way. So that's our end goal. And we've got a lot of efforts underway to support that end goal, all of which you all at the legislature have supported. So again, very thankful for that support.
Well, look, I tell people, I'm even doing my part personally. As you know, our oldest daughter, she will enter the Rural Physician Scholarship Program and start medical school this summer. So we're excited about that.
Congratulations to you and to her and the whole family. That's good.
But our community is also excited because she's indicated that she wants to come back there and you know, serve her people right at home and work there. So we're really excited about that, just from, you know, from the rural place that we come from, for sure.
And we'll do our part to keep her in Mississippi when she graduates. You and Mama have to do your part too.
We'll certainly do our part.
We all work together to get that, to have that end goal. So I know this is just a crazy busy time for you right now with the session, and I'm very thankful that you were able to carve out the time and come spend the time with us, and to be able to have some message and some comments for all of the people here at the Medical Center. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thank you for your leadership for the entire state of Mississippi, and thank you for your support of the Medical Center. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
It's been great to have Speaker White here this morning. I just want to say to everybody, thank you for all the hard work you're doing. This year, we've got a lot of great news out of the few months of this year that we've gotten into. I think things are going very well at the Medical Center, and it is because of the hard work that everybody's doing and the effort that you're putting into it, the heart that you're putting into your work. I thank you for that, and have a great Friday.